Hi, welcome to Culture and Causation. I'm Aaron Briley, and today I want to discuss a taboo subject surrounding inner-city Black communities. Actually, this may be the most taboo subject. It's the fundamental disease crippling this community and destroying the best within it. I rarely, if ever, hear it discussed by the right, and it's certainly never discussed by anyone on the left. The issue I'm talking about is the negative effect of a racial identity. Having a Black racial identity as one's core self-conception is cancerous and destroys those who accept it. But before I explain why, here's a short anecdote from my teenage years. When I was in high school, I used to listen to hip-hop and read The Source magazine, a leading magazine catering to the lifestyle of hip-hop culture. My friends and I used to emulate what we saw and heard from rappers. For a few years, my identity was a racial one. Or more precisely, it was a cultural one that I conceptualized as a racial one. But what did this mean? Well, to give you one example, I stopped focusing on my schoolwork during the last year in high school. Good grades weren't highly valued in this community. Instead, I mimicked the language and beliefs that I heard in the music and read in the magazine. Not only did I neglect improving my mind at school, but I also made it worse by emulating the language and ideas of deeply immoral people. From NWA's F the Police to Two Live Crew's Me So Horny, many rappers seem to celebrate moral depravity. I could give more examples, but I want to get to my point. And my point is that holding a racial identity is one of the most destructive and restrictive beliefs one can have. It is something that destroys creativity and robs the individual who holds it of his agency. That is, one does not have control over the most fundamental aspects of his life, who he is and what he wants to be. In philosophy, this is sometimes called a background belief because it is behind the scenes, so to speak, conditioning one's other beliefs. Behind the scenes because this belief is working to influence a person's actions or subordinate beliefs without him even knowing it. Let me explain how this happens. First, for a person to change his circumstances, he needs to act in ways that have a higher chance of producing successful outcomes. Everyone knows this. Let's take the example of being successful in school. To be successful in school, we need at a minimum to attend class, do our homework, and do well on tests. Second, before we can act in successful ways, we need to make successful decisions. We need to decide on what are the best actions we should take. This too is straightforward. I have to decide to go to school in the morning before I go, or decide to do my homework when I get home before I do it. Third, now a decision presupposes various items to choose among and also a means of evaluating those items. Let's say I could decide to hang out with my friends, watch a movie, or do my homework. I realize that doing my homework is more important, so I choose that. Finally, the beginning of this entire process is being able to have before one's mind all of the available and relevant options. It is from this master list that we can evaluate, decide, and act. However, when people have restrictive conceptions of what they can do or be, they fail to see all of the possibilities. Instead, they get an abridged version with much fewer options. This is what a racial identity does for people in inner-city Black communities. This is where the problem begins. Unfortunately, the notion that someone's ethnicity or race should be the centerpiece of one's identity is prevalent. But as I've noted earlier, racial identities restrict what a person thinks is possible. Let's go back to school. When a child from an inner-city Black community has a sense that he shouldn't spend too much time on his homework or that being successful at school is being white, he no longer considers academic goals a viable option. His available and relevant options are no longer as rich as they once were. He might grow up thinking that being Black entails listening to certain music and not others, wearing certain clothes and not others, pursuing certain careers and not others, traveling to certain places, eating certain foods, and virtually everything else under the sun. This is why I think racial identities are at the crux of the problems in the inner city. Insofar as a racial identity impairs the available and relevant possibilities in one's life, they impair the chances one has to act successfully. And this is because they impair one's agency. That is, they undermine one's ability to control the thoughts and outcomes of one's life. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next episode.